Hello, I'm Alan Green. You're listening to the BBC World Service and this is World Football. On this week's programme, a leading anti-racism campaigner tells us that they're having to work harder than ever.
We are not promising we can abolish racism just in time for the European Championship in 3 years, because that's not realistic.
But there is a breakthrough for anti-discrimination in the UK as British Asians begin to embrace football.
8-6 with their turbans buzzing. The drummers only come out, the red and white turbans come out on the big occasion.
And will extra officials on the pitch make life easier for referees?
I think most referees, for a big decision like that, would want to make the decision themselves.
Remember, if you want to download the programme, make sure you subscribe to the World Football podcast through our website. That's bbcworldservice.com/podcast. Follow the links to the World Service page. An important conference took place in Poland this week as leading figures from across Europe discussed how to eradicate discrimination and racism in football. The conference, which was co-organised by UEFA, the Players' Union FIFPro and Football Against Racism in Europe, saw participants also discuss topics ranging from the role of ethnic minorities in the game to xenophobia. At the end of the two-day conference, I spoke to Rafał Pankowski from Never Again, another of the hosts. He told me that the meeting had been important in the preparation for Euro 2012, which is being co-hosted by Poland and Ukraine.
This is, of course, just the first step. The talk comes before action now. We have to discuss issues and hopefully then we take the practical steps. So in this sense, I think it did help. It helped us showcase the progress that we made, but also the challenges that we still have, especially in the context of the next European Championship in Poland and in the Ukraine, where the problems are still quite serious in terms of racism, especially racism in football.
I was going to ask you, how big a problem is it in Poland and Ukraine?
Well, the first thing to know and to recognize is that racism does exist in Poland, in Ukraine, as it existed across Europe. So the first step is to recognize the existence of this serious problem, which is not obvious to all the stakeholders yet. So we have to recognize the problem is there, and we have to talk about the ways to solve it. In Poland, we document up to 100 racist incidents in football a year. Never Again Association, my organization, monitors racism in Polish football, and our data shows that the problem is still there. We made some progress in terms of reducing the presence of racist and neo-Nazi symbols in stadia, which is important. It still happens, but it happens less than a few years ago. But incidents still happen, anti-Semitic incidents, racism against black players, monkey chanting, all that still happens on a pretty regular basis in Poland. And Ukraine has the same problem, possibly even more serious.
Do you think the situation is worsening then?
Well, I think it's been improving in Poland, actually, as a result of hard campaigning by Football Against Racism in Europe and Never Again. Certain measures were finally taken by the Polish authorities, the Polish Football Association, but I think there is still a long way to go. It's still not an acceptable level. No level of racism is acceptable, but certainly the level of racism in Polish football is way too much for anyone to accept it.
It's been suggested to me that people in your country simply don't appreciate that what they find acceptable is unacceptable in many other countries.
Well, I think that's correct. That's correct. There is still a degree of acceptance of anti-Semitism, for example, anti-Semitic chants in the stadium against the other team. Even if there are no Jews whatsoever among the players or the spectators, there is no Jew around, you still get anti-Semitism as a very visible element of the football culture. So this is a big challenge. This is a thing that has to be changed, because this is simply not acceptable.
What measures are in place currently to try to stop this behaviour?
Never Again Association, together with the Polish Football Association, started training of stewards and game observers, educating them about some basic issues, such as racist and fascist symbols and their meaning. They are supposed to remove those symbols, or even stop games where such symbols appear, which actually happened already a few times. Matches were stopped and the symbols were removed. On several occasions, clubs were fined for racist behavior of fans. But there is still a long way to go. As I said, we wish those measures were enforced much more vigorously and much more consistently.
So you don't think that the sanctions that are in place at the moment, the fines that are imposed, are enough?
I think they are not enough. They are not enough. The fines should be more serious, and they should be applied in a much more consistent way. Having said that, I have to say that any fines wouldn't do. We need much more than fines and sanctions. We need more educational measures aiming at cultural change. We need more education. We need more positive role models. We need more awareness raising about racism and anti-racism and what it is all about. And I think we made the good step. This conference was a good step forward, but of course this is not the end of the road, it's the beginning of the road.
We are running out of time. We've only got 3 years before 2012. What would you like to see done realistically to make sure that the European Championship in Poland and Ukraine passes by peacefully?
Right. Well, what we are saying is that we are not promising we can abolish racism just in time for the European Championship in 3 years, because that's unfortunately not realistic. But we say we can make a difference, actually, even in the short time periods we have. We can reduce it significantly. 3 years it's a tight race, but we can still do a lot to raise awareness of racism as evil. And we already achieved something in the past couple of years. We still have 3 years to go in terms of awareness raising, education, monitoring is very important. Media work is very important too. And we are happy to see that the Polish media is picking up this kind of issues. They start to understand the issue. They start to talk about it. There is some discussion. So the awareness is growing, and in 3 years we can still raise it much more. Hopefully we will make it.
Rafał Pankowski from Never Again in Poland. Now, one of the key areas for football authorities is trying to get more supporters from ethnic minorities to go to matches. Football crowds in Britain are overwhelmingly white, but that's been changing over the past decade. 2.5% of the UK's 60 million population are British Asians. They've been put off by a perception of racism in grounds and by a lack of role models on the pitch. But research shows that more British Asians are attending Premier League matches than ever before, with most following the so-called Big Four. The BBC's Asian network, Suki Hare, has been speaking to supporters, club officials, fan groups and the Premier League itself to find out why the change is happening now.
Malta Singh,
Preetham Singh,
Sunderland fans, Punjab Army.
Over the past few months, I've been travelling up and down the country to find out why many more British Asians are attending football matches than at any time in the past. At Sunderland, there's a group called the Punjab Army, and if you check out the club's website, you'll see a great picture of some Singhs wearing their turbans in the colour of their favourite football team.
There was a big group of us at one time who would go to the big games, if you like, the semi-finals or the championship season, which was a couple of years ago. And the drummers only come out, the red and white turbans come out on the big occasions, where everyone's buzzing. Our aim is to walk across the Tyne Bridge with red and white on, 8 Sikhs with their turbans, and let's see what reaction we get from Newcastle United. Newcastle United away, be aware.
To find out more about the numbers of British Asians attending football games, I went down to the Premier League's headquarters.
I'm Cathy Long and I'm Head of Supporter Relations at the Premier League. Yes, I think there are definitely more British Asians coming to football matches than at any time we've seen in the past. I think we've really seen the landscape of football changing in the last few years. You can notice it when you go to games, you notice it when you just see the crowds on television.
The Premier League have been doing research into British Asians on behalf of clubs.
Particularly amongst Asian fans, it was Man United and Liverpool were the most supported teams. That wasn't a surprise. But it was good to do the research to sort of have that confirmed. Because I think for the other clubs, for clubs like Blackburn and Bolton and Aston Villa, the challenge is how they now get those younger generation of supporters in through the gates.
Back in Sunderland, the next generation are already being nurtured.
All the entertainment, like watching the match and everything.
I think it's just really good when everyone cheers and stuff because it's like really exciting.
No, I'm just a huge fanatic of Sunderland.
I just like cheering for my team.
And it's not just fathers and sons enjoying a game, it's also husbands and wives.
My name's Gurdeep Singh from Birmingham. I'm an Aston Villa supporter. When I met my wife Surinder, some couples actually support each other's hobbies and interests, so I mean, I explained the game to her, explained what it's all about. I mean, she had some apprehensions beforehand about violence and the like, but I've never experienced any.
Hi, I'm Surinder Damu. I'm here to support Villa with my husband. I haven't really been into football since I've been married. My husband's been sporting, I've been coming with him, and I've loved it. Loved every moment of it.
I think that's what they mean by atmosphere. Sunderland have just scored a goal and the crowd have gone mad. They've got a website, they've got leaflets, they organise charity events, and they do everything a fan club should do. But more importantly, they're British Asian.
Jazz Baines. I'm here representing the Punjabi Wolves. What we're doing is actually much more than for the Asian community. I mean, something like, 30% of our members, aren't Asian. And we've raised tens of thousands of pounds for local charities. This is part of the notion of seva, which we as Punjabis are accustomed to, our commitment to give to those who are less fortunate.
Wolverhampton's been home to people from India since the 50s, and today hosts one of the largest Indian populations in the country.
Jez Moxey, Chief Executive, Wolverhampton Wanderers. We are the heartbeat of that community, and we must reflect what is going on in the community. And with 15% of the population of Indian origin, it's incumbent on us to make sure that in time we have 15% of the people turning up at Molineux that are of Indian origin.
But the challenge is to engage and recruit these people to football.
We're the first professional football club in the United Kingdom to understand the importance of the Kapan and to allow it to be brought into a stadium.
And here at this event, organised for Indian professional side JCT, they recruited the likes of Mulkeet Singh.
Himself, Mr. Mulkeet Singh. Punjabi munda. Premiership de vich kheluga aur ode piche likhya hoga Mr. Singh.
And a Punjabi Elvis. All to celebrate British Asians in football. It hasn't gone unnoticed. Biara Power is head of anti-racist organisation Kick It Out.
Punjabi Wolves, are a model for an Asian fans group. They know what they want to achieve. They want to celebrate the Asian presence at the club, which probably goes back 2 or 3 generations now. But at the same time, I think the Wolves are unique. We have a Punjabi community there, latched onto the club, became supporters some time ago, and that's now being passed on generationally.
And it seems we can learn a few things from India too.
My name is Samir Thapar. I'm the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of JCT. There was a friendly between Bayern Munich and East Bengal of Mohan Bagan, and there were over 120,000 people watching the match. I think you could draw huge crowds. We've had the Indian team come and play here a couple of years ago, and you had 17,000 people, all Indians.
People have given up their time and commitment in order to make Punjabi Wolves a success and a blueprint for other British Asians looking to forge links with their clubs. Raj is one of them.
All we say to people who've never been to a football match, there is no fear factor. Don't be worried about going to a game. If there's any fear out there, log on to our website, drop us an email, and we'll take you to your first game.
Butch,
Faizan, Khalid, Hassan, Taya, Noshin, Akib.
Welcome to Luton Town Football Club.
Luton are playing Bradford today, 2 teams with big Asian populations right next to the ground, but I'm struggling to see any brown faces. Butch Faisal is chair of the National Asians in Football Forum and has been doing his best to help Luton Town recruit Asian fans from around the ground.
10, 12 years ago, before the project started, walking down those roads, you'd always see these kids that have a bat in their hand, they'll be playing cricket. But now you go down the same roads, and I'm telling you what, they're kicking a football against a fence, or they've got themselves together and they're having a kick about. And I think that's the impact that the scheme has had on the ground.
It's a similar story for Blackburn and Bolton. Kathy Long is head of supporter relations at the Premier League.
Clubs have had a particular image that appealed to a particular local community, but then actually you look around and the club may not have changed, but the local community has. And the club may be sitting there in the midst of this and saying, well, we're not doing anything different. But if the local community around you has changed, then you do need to do something different, and you need to understand what it is that appeals to those people.
Rover will go up for this. Go, Rover!
Luton Stadium is typical of many football grounds up and down the country, surrounded by terraced housing with a mainly Asian population. The problem is that Luton Town is no Man United. Success on the pitch usually determines success off it. Luton have been docked points, so it looks like they'll be dropping down a division this year, which means it'll be harder to get the younger kids to support them.
It's a good opportunity to see the real-life players playing on the pitch instead of, like, watching TV at home.
Don't your friends come up to you if they support Man United and say, your club's rubbish, why aren't you supporting Man United?
No, I just say, yeah, that I live in Luton, I support them.
Why aren't your parents here supporting you guys?
Because
What are their excuses?
my dad's asleep, they're busy. Bush didn't give them tickets.
It doesn't seem as if racism is a barrier anymore, but there are still those who believe it exists and need more reassurance if they're to go to a match.
I think it's a bit unsafe, and I think a lot about racism.
I've never been into football. Say if my husband was, then I would go, but it is an issue about racism, because you do think about it.
Do you think he's mad?
Yeah, football, crazy!
Football clubs should be grateful for people like Butch. He even neglects his kids on a Saturday to help other children get that vital first matchday experience.
I've supported them all my life, and hopefully some of these children will also support them. And I think that's another good thing. The fact that we get another generation down, and when I'm gone, hopefully they'll carry on the great name of Luton Town Football Club, the greatest football team in the world.
Suki Hare reporting for the BBC. You're listening to World Football on the World Service with me, Alan Green. Well, how many matches this weekend will be decided by a controversial refereeing decision? Last week's meeting of the game's lawmakers will make it less likely in the future, they hope, as World Football's Robert Hillier reports.
On towards Barris in the penalty area, and Barris flicks it forward, it's not in yet. Garcia puts it over the line, is it? It's a goal for Liverpool. Garcia has scored. It was given by the linesman on the far side of the field. Chelsea thought they kept it on.
Look, he's nearly pulled his shirt off. Howard Webber's got that exactly right. In fact, I wish I'd said it's about time if people give penalties for this, and he's done it, he's seen it.
The most controversial incidents in the game still surround goals, of course. Was the ball over the line? Was it a penalty? Well, two decisions taken by the IFAB, who decide on the rules of the game, may help under-pressure referees. The idea of two extra refs just for the penalty area was tried at UEFA's Under-19 European qualifying tournament last year, and it went well, they say, and now they'll try the idea under the full spotlight of media and fans. Nicola Monjou from FIFA was at the meeting last week.
It's going to be tested during a professional league. So it could be, for example, a league starting this summer, but it could also be a league starting next March, for example, and finishing in November. You know that there are a few leagues, actually quite a number of leagues in the world, which are played from March to October or November. Bearing in mind that the board has given its agreement for let's say a complete report made on this experiment to be given only in 2011. So that gives us more or less 2 years. FIFA has always preferred to look for human solutions for refereeing. We feel that football is a human game, and as such has to be referred by a human being.
Dermot Gallagher retired from refereeing in the English Premier League last season, having worked in the top flight for 17 years, and he was a FIFA official for 8 years.
I have mixed feelings, really. I think the idea in principle is good in so much as it acts as a deterrent. I think the downside is that obviously where the officials are going to come from, because we're already 8,000 short in England alone, so I don't know how they're going to provide them. I think a few of the other downsides is the fact that in the winter, if this guy's just stood stationary for an hour and a half, he's going to be absolutely frozen solid, and whether that will keep him mentally alert, I'm not sure. And I think the major downside for me would be that if he spots something, is he going to have the same tolerance level as the referee would, in so much as he's really putting the referee's neck on the block? I think most referees, for a big decision like that, would want to make the decision themselves.
So, do you think that the official concerned has to have the power to directly award a penalty or directly award a free kick to make this work?
I think to make it work, he would have to be in communication with the referee and give him assistance, and then the referee makes a choice. I think if he's given something where he can indicate that he's seen something and whatever, I think it's a lot more dangerous. All the Premier League guys are mic'd up now. If it's a situation where he's mic'd up and he says, Derm, this has happened, be aware of this, and my attention's drawn to it, I think, yeah, okay, great. Where it's one where he just sees something that nobody else sees, I think it's very difficult to sell.
What do you think the motivation is? Are we looking at things like shirt pulling or holding from corners, or is it to do with goal line incidences? What do you think is the motivation behind it?
Well, it's definitely the shirt pulling. I mean, at the moment, it's a war zone in the penalty area at times, isn't it? Especially where teams really use set pieces. I mean, the teams that rely on set piece situations, putting people in, pressuring people. We see forwards pushing, backing in, jumping at goalkeepers. The amount of shirt pulling by defenders. It's happened in the last two tournaments, and I think FIFA and UEFA have said we've got to do something to combat it. And this seems to be their system. Is another pair of eyes will see it. Whether they really are looking at it as to stop it, or whether it's going to be the deterrent factor, I don't know. I mean, what I would be really sceptical about, as I said, is if he sees something that nobody else sees, is selling it to the general public.
Carroll took it on his chest, and it quite clearly bounced into the back of the net.
That was a
and
goal.
It has not been given.
The lines, it was a brilliant effort. Well, you'll never hear the last of that. He's hit it from a distance of 40 yards. Carroll dropped it, and from where I'm standing, it looked as though it had gone over the line.
That was a clear goal, Jimmy.
Yes, it seemed to bounce behind the goal line.
Absolute dead set goal.
Well, a year ago they said too complicated, too expensive, and it hadn't been tried enough. But now FIFA say they're willing to look again at goal line technology. This time last year on World Football, we heard from Paul Hawkins, who developed the Hawkeye system used in cricket and tennis. He wasn't happy with the IFAB's decision to end their interest in his technology.
Either they're incompetent or they're trying to hold back the real reasons that they're coming up with. Platini's reason, even more unbelievable, was to say that seeing technology in other sports and it ruins the flow of the game, and football is a very fast-moving sport, which again, even less justifiable when our system takes half a second to give the information to the referee, so it is an immediate decision. So I'm very disappointed with the reasons they gave.
But the chip in the pool system, pioneered by Adidas and German company Kairos, seems to be back in favour. They say it takes just 1 day to install and alerts the referee through his watch if a ball has crossed the line. Here's Oliver Braun, a director at the company.
I mean, in one way it surprises us, because last year they said everything was put on ice, but at the other hand, we let them know that we worked on the system, we improved the system, not to the fact of accuracy reasons, but of the fact that we had a lot of referee feedback also from the FIFA Club World Cup 2007, and we worked on the usability and also that it is easier to install it into the stadiums. But, of course, we are now very happy that they want to take a look at it again, and we are very confident that we can really prove that the system is really an assistance for all the referees out there.
I think goal line technology is a must, to be honest. I'm really surprised that it didn't get through last year.
Dermot Gallagher again.
When Hawkeye provided this system that they said was 100% foolproof, I thought that it would get through, and for some reason the vote was 5-3, so it was against. If you speak to any referee in the Premier League, they will say they want goal line technology immediately. No referee wants to wake up the day after a match and read a headline or see a picture that a ball's over the line and they haven't given a goal. Conversely, we don't want to give a goal that wasn't over the line as it was in the last week on 2 occasions. It's quite ironic, really, that we had the one that everybody argues about in the World Cup and then an odd one here and there. But in the last couple of seasons, for some reason, it's become very prevalent. We've had numerous cases And I just think now that the stakes are so high at professional level that something has to be done to ensure that it's foolproof.
So managers want it, refs want it, and now the game's rule makers seem to want it too. And it's almost certain the next major tournament will see goal line technology in action. As for 2 more officials, that seems more doubtful, but UEFA boss Michel Platini says he'd like to see the plan in place for the European Championships in 2012.
Well, personally, I see the use of 2 extra officials as potentially beneficial. One of the things that really gets to me these days is the amount of pushing and shirt pulling that goes on in the penalty area, either unpunished or unseen by referees who clearly need eyes in the backs of their heads. Having someone else watching for such infringements should help stop that happening. However, I have 2 doubts, one already voiced by Dermot Gallagher. Where on earth are we going to find these extra people? We're told it's difficult enough to attract people into the game willing to take on the burden of being a referee. Who's going to volunteer to stay near the goal line, nearer fans, only too willing to shout abuse? And will there be enough officials to have 6 at every game, at every level of the game? I just can't see it happening. But my second concern is more important. I think this is a halfway house, and it's typical of authorities who generally don't want to use video technology, something that the referees themselves seem to want. Until that contradiction is properly resolved, we'll go on having controversial decisions made that go uncorrected. Now, don't forget, Russell Fuller presents Sports World at 14 hours GMT later today here on the BBC World Service, including live FA Cup and Premier League action. My thanks to the show's producers, Robert Hillier and Ian Morris. Join us again at the same time next week, and until then, always remember, World Service, World Football.